yes, you do know how to run, municipalities.
You're pretending, Anele.
Cape Town works well because there's segregation, and that's why it's easy to run it like that. Johannesburg isn't segregated. How are you going to manage that? You can't tell me Cape Town is not segregated with a flat face.
You can't tell me that Joburg isn't segregated with a flat face. You're pretending that there are places all over South Africa that are poor, that are not people of color. The tragedy is, with the legacy of the past, in Johannesburg, there are ghastly, ghastly areas. Drive through Alexandra and see what it looks like. It is an absolute bloody disgrace.
Your campaign is controversial is because you called black people who are going to Cape Town refugees.
Let me tell you that I'm a refugee, and my parents were refugees.
Now you want to come and be the mayor of Johannesburg, but if you are looking at black people who are coming to Johannesburg, who are here living in Johannesburg, that are not here as refugees, that's not the person you want in charge.
Why do black people hate refugees so much?
You can't ask them why we're offended by something if it's offensive.
Guys, so these are kind of the videos I enjoy so much. And, I think this discussion was really important, even though it felt as though in this interview, this Anele, I've actually watched some of her interviews with some political, juggernauts in the country. Julius Malema was one big one. She had a really interesting video interview, but also she's actually interviewed some really interesting people. And it was really surprising for me, this interview she had with Helen Zille. The last interview I watched with Helen Zille, I think in a studio like this, was with Shidi, the one who passed away, may her soul rest in peace. But that interview was quite heated, but not as heated as this one. And in this video here, I see, it just almost appears as though Anele just came out, to sort of like represent that attacker, that bulldog, to try to question Helen Zille's ambitions to run as the mayor for Johannesburg, and raising many of the issues around social cohesion and this social contract between white, blacks, Indians, and colored that really fascinates me a lot about South Africa. And so this was a really heated interview, guys. Just buckle up your seatbelts. But one of the things that for me, I take home personally as a Nigerian regarding tribes, because you see, when we speak about this desire for a tribeless kind of politics in Africa, when we speak about tribes in Nigeria, we speak about probably the Igbos, Yorubas, Hausas, and all. You come to Kenya, you speak about the Luos, the Luhias, the Kikuyus, and all. But in South Africa, it's peculiar, because when you speak about tribes, although they are the Zulus and the Xhosas and all that, we still have to understand tribalism in South Africa based on the friction between whites, coloreds, Indians, and blacks. And what I see in this conversation between Anele and Helen Zille is the classic confrontation between the blacks and the whole thing with the black-white consciousness in South Africa, which is really still heavy, guys. It's really heavy. And it's actually already showing, some of the parameters with which Helen Zille would have to battle if she eventually becomes mayor of Joburg, as it were, as we watch the by-elections coming through. But Anele was really raising some really interesting points, and Helen Zille's clapback as well to those points were actually really phenomenal, as it were, as she speaks about how this whole issues about probably some of the errors Helen Zille has made in the past. I really don't know. I'm still yet to do my research in her social media posts, but I've heard a lot of political commentators on social media that have argued that Helen Zille had made some posts that might not have been friendly to the colored population in South Africa earlier on. And I think she really tried to correct all of those, probably misinterpretations. I don't know, especially on the podcast with McG, but also on several other podcasts, arguing that she's one person who speaks, exactly what she sees. Then probably she struggles with political correctness, because at some point, speaking in terms of what you see, just like a Trump today, might end up not being so political correct all the time. And so I think this is one struggle Helen Zille actually has had to confront, and which I think she will still confront if she eventually becomes Joburg's mayor. But these are some of the clashes. These are some of the issues Anele and Zille were actually trying to break down here, where she argues that Zille once called black people refugees. Zille retorting, arguing, and I saw this also in her interview with Sizwe Mpofu Welch, where she gave a historical account of how her family actually survived the Holocaust in Germany and came into South Africa Africa's refugees and started to build and all that. But, that reference to her calling black people as refugees, referring to blacks who moved to Cape Town as refugees, was one of those things that Anele wanted her to break down. And I think Helen Zille did justice to that question really well in trying to really ascertain why Anele's theory was that Cape Town is easy to run because Cape Town is deeply segregated. I'm sure one day I'll be visiting Cape Town to really understand these things for myself. But Anele argues, and probably this is a thought from many black people in South Africa, arguing that one of the really simple reasons why Cape Town might feel as though it's easy to run by the DA today is because there's a massive segregation, and I think, the sports minister, Gaten Mackenzie, also spoke a lot about some provinces, some areas in, Cape Town, which he spoke about rats eating the foot of people and all that. And so I think this probably might be a way in which the black community understand governance in Cape Town being the DA controlled area. That Anele argues that it's easy to run because it's segregated. Helen Zille argues that no, that Cape Town cannot be segregated. You can't call Cape Town segregated. And she argues that Joburg, where she lived, where she was born, where she fell in love and all that, so to speak, is also segregated. And this, in trying to really, problematize these issues, they really got into a really major clash. And I think for me, this kind of discussions, one of the big takeaways I got from this discussion is that it's really important in a nation like South Africa to have these kinds of discussions, as bitter as they may be, as though they actually might want to erupt in punches being thrown in the studios. They're really important because there are deep issues of segregation still among the populace and also in the minds of South Africans. And I've been walking and talking a lot to young people in South Africa. I still see the struggle. Many young people in South Africa are unable to come together and have a one critical voice because of these whole issues. And so the more we create safe spaces to speak about this bitterness that has stemmed from the circumstances of South Africa's history going forward. I think it's one really major way to really start understanding how to heal as a nation going forward. And so this is a really big clash with Helen Zille and this Anele, this 947 studio radio station, which I really enjoy their videos and all that. Really powerful confrontation both Helen Zille and Anele had. I think it's really important that we watch to the end. So let's really watch this, really confront. And one of the really interesting parts of this confrontation is the white guys in the room. So Helen Zille being what you would call a white South African, Anele being what people would naturally want to call maybe colored or black South African, but then there's still whites in the room. And watching this conflagration between Zille and Anele, it was just mind-blowing to really watch. But anyway, like I said, this is actually a really interesting stepping stone towards that pursuit for social cohesion. And I hope that when Helen Zille becomes mayor of Joburg, she might be able to use her platform and her authority as then to really hope to bring social cohesion among the races, blacks, whites, Indians, and colored. And we see, because this is my only solution, the only solution I see for South Africa to become a prosperous nation going forward, there has to be a way in which these four races come together, work together, fight along their differences, but probably leave these differences aside and come together collectively to drive towards solving national problems that affect all races, in different ways. So let's quickly listen to this debate clash, as it were, between Helen Zille and this Anele 947 radio presenter, and share your thoughts, guys, in the comments.
Okay, so you've held so many leadership positions, and I think the one that lives closely to what you are running towards now is the fact that you were mayor in Cape Town and you won an award for World Mayor of the Year in 2008. It's something people don't speak about.
That's wild.
Often. Are you the head of your WhatsApp group as well, in your neighborhood, the Neighborhood Watch? Because any leadership position for you is good to go.
Well, I'm always around to try and make a difference to where I live, where I work, and the country that I was blessed to be born in.
So where do you live?
I live in Pinelands,
In
in
Cape
Cape
Town.
Town currently, and I'm going to be living in Emmarentia, Johannesburg, from very soon.
Okay, because that's what the thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
That you can't run for mayor of Johannesburg if you're not living in Johannesburg.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You have lived in Johannesburg before.
Oh,
so
yes,
this
I
is
was
not
born
something.
in Johannesburg. I was raised in Johannesburg. I schooled in Johannesburg. I went to university in Johannesburg. I worked in Johannesburg. I know this place.
I mean, Helen, we're not going to sit here and act like you are not good enough for the job, right? We know that you're good enough for the job, but I think there are politics in you getting the job as mayor of Johannesburg because of how Cape Town is currently run. Certain areas in Cape Town are run fantastically well. When world class doesn't begin to describe how well those areas are run, but there's some that aren't, right? And Cape Town works well because there's segregation, and that's why it's easy to run it like that. Johannesburg isn't segregated. How are you going to manage that?
You make a very bold statement about Cape Town being segregated. I live in a suburb that is totally integrated, completely integrated.
Yes, that's 1 or 2 suburbs, but you
Not
have
1 or 2 suburbs. I mean, absolutely everywhere. When people get a job and can earn an income, they can go and live where they can afford to live.
afford.
Well, of course, all of us live where we can afford to live. I would love to live in Camps Bay. I can't afford to live in
But that's
Camps
why
Bay.
Cape Town is segregated, because it is made difficult for people who are from Gugulethu and Langa and Khayelitsha to then move into the suburbs. You can't tell me Cape Town is not segregated with a flat face.
You can't tell me that Joburg isn't segregated with a flat face. I mean, I'm here in the middle of Sandton. This is some of the most expensive properties. But let me explain to you a little bit of the facts of Cape Town. Cape Town has been well run for 20 years. When a place is well run and gets reliable services and the politicians are honest and they don't steal the money, then many businesses relocate to Cape Town and many people relocate to Cape Town. And while hundreds of thousands of very poor people also relocate to Cape Town because they want a better life, Cape Town is lucky enough to have very many people who can invest money, who can start businesses, and who can create jobs also coming to Cape Town. Those people are running away from Johannesburg. When people who have capital and skills come to a city, obviously property prices increase because there's a lot of competition for those properties. But also in that kind of context, people pay very high rates so that we can offer the most generous by far, free basic services package to the very poor in the city of Cape Town.
Okay, so in there you say you're running away to Joburg, running away to Cape Town and all of that. One of the other reasons that your mayoral candidacy is under
Scrutiny.
Scrutiny. The Star this morning on the headline, they said your campaign is controversial, is because you called black people who are going to Cape Town refugees. Once again, in Johannesburg, I don't think that's something that can just easily fly because, A, we're all refugees in Johannesburg because none of us are from here. So when you've made statements like that in the past, do you realize that they can be detrimental to what you want now?
Let me tell you that I'm a refugee and my parents were refugees. They came here because their lives were threatened and half my family was murdered. And that is why they were refugees in South Africa. There is absolutely no blame on a refugee for being a refugee.
But in the context of what you were saying...
The blame is on the circumstances that forced them to become a refugee. Now, the truth is that many, many people come to Cape Town because they are escaping the situation in which they live. In the Eastern Cape, hundreds of thousands of people leave for Cape Town because they want a school that works, because they want a clinic that works, because they want a chance to get a job, because they want clean water, because they want reliable electricity, because they want connectivity. And refugee is a word that you use everywhere in the world. It is not pejorative to say you are going away from something.
It is, though, because you were referring to the black people in the Eastern Cape who've gone to Cape Town, because much like that, you can't say they just went to Western Cape. They also come to Johannesburg. My question to you is, now you want to come and be the mayor of Johannesburg, but if you are looking at black people who are coming to Johannesburg, who are here living in Johannesburg, that are not here as refugees, that's not the person you want in charge.
Why do black people hate refugees so much?
You can't ask them why we're offended by something. If it offends them, it offends them. That's not the debate here. The debate is, you didn't call the white people in Cape Town who are not from Western Cape refugees. But in that moment when you said it, you didn't.
I'm a refugee.
So do you regret the way that came out? Would you like to change that statement?
Well, the truth is that anybody who wants to create a
better life for themselves.
Anybody who wants to create offense and manufacture outrage will pick one word that isn't offensive and build it up as if it causes moral outrage. What I'm saying is the circumstances in the Eastern Cape are a total disgrace. The circumstances in Johannesburg are a total disgrace. I would call myself...
Some of the places in Cape Town are also a total disgrace.
Well, you tell me which places haven't got water, which places haven't got electricity, which places haven't got refuse removal, which places have not got...
Safety,
Well...
gangs, crime.
Absolutely. Safety, gangs, crime. That's why we're going to fight to the Constitutional Court to get policing powers for the city of Cape Town. The national government can't run policing. It's totally corrupt. Kwazemy told us. The Madlanga Commission is listening to the evidence. It is riddled with corruption from criminal syndicates. That's why we want to control policing. The police are too controlled by the gangs themselves, by the drug dealers themselves. That's why we want to control policing. And we're going to fight till the Constitutional Court to get that power.
You see, the issue at hand is that, once again, there are areas in Cape Town where what you're saying, you're absolutely correct, and there's proof of it. But the areas in Cape Town that are not, and the optics are, the areas in Cape Town that are not are the areas that are people of color. Right?
Well,
so what it looks like is that, yes, you do know how to run, municipalities.
You're pretending, Anele, you're pretending that there are places all over South Africa that are poor, that are not people of color. The tragedy is, with the legacy of the past, in Johannesburg, there are ghastly, ghastly areas. Drive through Alexandra and see what it looks like. It is an absolute bloody disgrace. Drive through Alexandra and see what it looks like. Those are people of color. If you go to any ANC-run municipality, people of color are worse off than they are in any DA municipality. And that's a fact.
So what
and even the president knows that.
Yeah, so what you're saying then is the DA is bad, but not as bad as the ANC, and that's why we should vote for you.
No. The DA faces the legacy of the past. It raises a huge amount of money from the better off suburbs and cross-subsidizes to give the poor the best free basic service package in the country. It spends billions investing in infrastructure for the poor. But let me tell you something else, Anele. No government anywhere ever is going to put you in a 3-bedroom house in a garage. What government does is provide you water, electricity, sewerage, refuse removal, a school, and a clinic. And then people have to use that as a platform to get themselves out of poverty. Ask people what they are doing. How many fathers are sitting with their children, investing in those children, being role models for their children, and how many are being absent fathers? What is their responsibility? How many parents are being role models for their children, or how many are taking drugs and drinking alcohol? This is a partnership. The government provides the ladder. The parents have to hold the ladder, and the children have to climb up the ladder. I don't
dispute that, and you're right, everything you said, but I just feel like if you're using Cape Town as an example, it is just provided better to other areas than other areas.
Absolutely not. We provide much, much better to the poor than we do to the rich.